Hello children, welcome to your 8th standard mathematics class. We are doing lesson number 7, variation. In your previous class we saw what is variation. Variation is defined by any change in some quantity due to change in another. We also saw what is direct variation and we solved a few sums related to direct variation. Today let's move on to what is inverse variation. Now we saw that in a variation, if there are two quantities, a change in one quantity will result in a change in the other quantity. In direct variation, we saw that when one quantity increases, the related second quantity decreases or vice versa. Now in inverse variation, what happens is, when there are two different quantities with an inverse variation, when one quantity increases, the other decreases. For example, when you're traveling to a particular location, as your speed increases, the time it takes to arrive at that specific location decreases. If you decrease your speed, the time it takes to arrive at that location will increase. That is, speed and time are inversely related. If you're traveling fast, you will require less time, and if you're driving slowly, you will take more time. Hence, we can say that the quantities speed and time are inversely proportional, or they vary inversely. Now, let's take another example. As the number of rows increases, the number of students in each row is decreasing. So here, if you take the product of number of students and number of rows, the product is a constant. In this case, it is 240. So you can take this example as if there are 240 children in 8th standard and you are arranging them in rows. So if you have 6 rows, you have to have 40 children in one row. So when the number of rows increases to 24, the students in a row decreases to 10. So here you see that when one quantity is increasing, the other related quantity decreases. Now this kind of a relation in which when one quantity increases, a related quantity decreases is called an inverse variation. So let's see the statement of inverse variation. The statement x is inversely proportional to y can also expressed as there is inverse variation in x and y. If x and y are in inverse proportion, then x multiplied by y is a constant. Assuming the constant to be k, it will be easy for you to solve problems. If x varies inversely as y, then x multiplied by y is a constant. Now how will you write inverse proportion? X inversely varies as y is written as x proportionate to 1 upon y. So x is equal to k upon y, or x is equal to k is the equation of variation, where k is the constant of variation. So inverse proportion is something like a seesaw. In a seesaw, when one child goes up, the other child comes down. Let's try another example. The number of days required to build a bridge, say time t, varies inversely to the number of workers. As the number of workers increases, the number of days required to build would decrease. That means if you have more workers, you will require less time. And if you have less workers, you will require more time. So how can you write the relation? T is proportional to 1 upon n. Let's take another example. The time t a trip takes and the speed travelled. We can write the relation as s proportional to 1 upon t. The two are inversely proportional. Now let's take a few examples from practice set 7.2 to write the relation of inverse variation. It's question number 4. Write the following statements using symbol of variation. The question is, the wavelength of sound L and its frequency f are in inverse variation. Now how will you write it using the symbol of variation? You can write L inversely varies as F. L inversely varies as F. Now let's see the second question. The intensity of light I varies inversely with the square of the distance d of a screen from the lamp. So the relation is the intensity of light varies inversely with the square of the distance. So how will you write? So you can write I inversely varies as the square of the distance. So it is 1 upon d square. Let's take the first question of practice set number 7.2. The information about number of workers and number of days to complete a work is given in the table. Complete the table. First we have to see whether this is direct variation or inverse variation. Here what is given? The number of workers and the number of days to complete a work. Looking at the first two entries, you can see that this is an inverse variation. If there are 30 workers, the work will be completed in 6 days. If there are 20 workers, you will take 9 days to complete the work. So you see the number of workers have come down from 30 to 20. So the time required has increased. So this is an example of inverse variation. So in solution you can write here, when more number of workers are there, then less days are required to complete the work, and vice versa. So the number of workers and days vary in inverse proportion. Now let's take the number of workers as m and the days required as n and solve the sum. So let the number of workers be m and the number of days be n. So what is the relation that we can write? Therefore m inversely varies as n. So using the constant of variation, we can write m multiplied by n is equal to k, where k is the constant of variation. Now using the first entry, that is m is equal to 30 and n is equal to 6, let us find the value of k. When m is equal to 30, then n is equal to 6, that is given. Therefore 30 into 6 is equal to k, substituting the values of m and n in the equation. Therefore k is equal to 180. So now can you write the equation of variation? Therefore the equation of variation is mn or m into n is 180. Now that you know the equation of variation, you can substitute the values and find out the unknown values. So here it's given n is equal to 12. We want to find the number of workers. Let us do that. So if n is equal to 12, then we want to find the value of m. So substituting n is equal to 12 in the equation of variation. In this equation, mn is equal to 180. We will get m multiplied by 12 is equal to 180. So m is equal to 180 divided by 12. Therefore, m is equal to 15. Now in this case, we have to substitute the value of m as 10 and find the value of n. Let us do that. If m is 10, you want to find the value of n. So substituting m is equal to 10 in the equation of variation, you will get 10 multiplied by n is 180. Therefore, n is 180 by 10. That is, the value of n is 18. You can complete the third part on your own. Please note down the definition of inverse variation and solve the sums in your classwork notebook. Thank you and have a nice day.